Grab releases can mainly happen in two ways. Either if you hold someone for too long, or by force if you get knocked out of it. Then there are also some weird special cases like this. When exactly does that happen? How important are grab releases and could they actually be used to your advantage? I'm C5 from the Beefy Smash Dudes and let's look into everything you need to know about grab releases. First of all, except for some special cases, there are usually two different forms of grab releases: the ground release and the air release. There are different reasons for why one or the other can happen. If the character being grabbed is not touching the ground while being held, they will usually get air released. This can either happen because the character is very small and is being held high by his opponent, like for example when Cloud is grabbing Olimar, or because the grab is happening right on the edge of a stage or platform so that there is simply no ground to be touched below the grabbed character. If the character is touching the ground with their feet, they will usually be ground released. By the way, Yoshi, Wii Fit Trainer and Mega Man are a bit special. Yoshi's and Wii Fit Trainer's grabs work as if the characters are not touching the ground, even if sometimes it looks like they do, so they will usually get air released. Mega Man is the exact opposite. He will usually ground release his opponent, even though, I mean, look at him. So apparently the game thinks they are touching the ground? Whatever. There's a really cool thread on Smashboards by Thinkaman that sums up which characters get air released in which situation. I will link it in the description. Now, you can sometimes manipulate which kind of grab release will happen. If the player that is being grabbed presses jump while mashing out, they can get air released even if they are touching the ground with their feet. On the other hand, the grabbing player can force a ground release by pummeling his opponent. This even works if their opponent is not touching the ground or is pressing jump, but it becomes a bit complicated here. Some characters can pummel in a very fast succession, as where others have short breaks in between their pummels. Now, if their opponent is being grab released exactly during one of those short breaks, they can still be air released, but they will always be ground released during a pummel. So if for example a Lucario or Ness keep pummeling their opponents as fast as possible, they can always force a ground release. Characters with slower pummels can only increase the chance of a ground release by pummeling, but can't force it 100% of the time. By the way, a common misconception is that because of pummeling, the duration of the grab is shortened. That's actually not true. The grab will last just as long if you pummel than if you don't pummel. Now, all of that happens if someone is being held for too long. Forced grab releases are more simple. They can happen either if the grabbing player or the grabbed player is knocked back. For the grabbing player, even the smallest knockback can interrupt the grab. Sometimes, if the grab and the hit happen at the same time, the grab will immediately be interrupted. This kind of grab release also damages the released player for 3%. Also, as soon as the grabbing player initiates a throw, he often has some kind of throw invincibility that prevents him from being hit, but that's a different story. For the player that is being grabbed, small knockback won't interrupt the grab, but strong hits will. Forced grab releases are always ground releases, never air releases. The special cases I was mentioning earlier can happen either if the ground beneath you changes or disappears, or like that. This is a pretty weird situation that can cause a lot of trouble if you are not prepared for it. When and why it happens is a bit complicated, but I try to explain it as simple as possible. When someone is grabbed, the game recognizes them as either grounded or in the air. Also, the game doesn't allow a switch between those states. So if someone is grounded while being grabbed, they will stay in that state until the grab is over. Now, if a character slides very far with his grab and he is close to an edge, what happens is that the grabbed player is forced to stay grounded even though he is pushed towards the edge. and if the grabbing player keeps sliding towards the edge, it results in both players being pushed together until they are so close that the game decides to force a grab release, which makes sometimes only one and other times both players fall off. Because it has something to do with the grounded state, this never happens to characters that don't touch the ground while being grabbed. It also doesn't happen if the grab is initiated close enough to the edge that the one being grabbed isn't touching the ground from the very beginning. Now that we know how grab releases work and how we can influence them, can we use them to our advantage? Are there grab release combos like there were in Brawl? Unfortunately, almost none, but you can still sometimes use a grab release to your advantage. First of all, there are only 2 true grab release combos and one of them only works with a custom move. Marth and Lucina's air release to up special 2 and Rosalina's air release to Luma's up smash. This one only works if Luma is positioned perfectly. For both of them you want an air release, so it only works on small characters or on the edge. Also, try not to pummel before they get released. Other than that, there are no true combos and not even 50-50s worth trying. On stage, you can sometimes use ground releases as a mix-up. If your character doesn't have a kill throw or a kill combo out of a throw and your opponent has high percent, you can go for a grab release and see how they react, read a roll or read a different option. Some Yoshi players like to immediately jab after a grab release, which can sometimes lead to an up smash, but remember that both players have the same amount of lag after a grab release. And since you can't re-grab right after a grab release, the easiest way to avoid almost any punish after being grab released is to just stand in the shield for a moment. On the other hand, if you know your opponent will just wait in his shield, you could immediately try to break it. But yeah, like I said, follow-ups after grab releases are very limited. Grabbing someone on the edge can be a bit more useful. Some characters that don't have the best recoveries can be screwed if they get grab released off stage, especially if they have no jump left. If you grab someone without them touching the ground, they won't get their double jump back. You can even pummel them or throw them, they will still have no jump until they are back on stage or grabbed onto the ledge. If you force a grounded grab release by pummeling in a situation like that, you might be able to take a stock from your opponent. No throw in the game would be able to get your opponent into the same position. Sometimes, if you grab your opponent after they already held onto the stage once, you can also decide not to pummel or throw them at all. Even though they will be air released in this situation, you can go for a punish if they try grabbing the ledge again, since they won't get their invulnerability back because you didn't damage them. Now, what about this weird grab release on the edge? After the grab gets cancelled, again both players have the same amount of lag, but they end up on different heights depending on the fall speed of the character. For floaty characters, the safest thing to do is probably to jump as soon as possible. You will most likely be above your opponent and might even get a footstool. If you play a fast faller, jumping immediately can be risky since you could get footstooled right after your jump. If you see that a release like that is about to happen, try not to mash out of the grab or you might buffer a fatal input. You can also drift pretty well to the left and right while still in lag. As for punishing your opponent, you have the same chances as he does. So a fast aerial might be able to catch them, but there is no guarantee since they can air dodge just as quickly as you can attack. All in all, the uses of grab releases are very limited in this game, but if you can get the right situation and know how grabs work, you can still make use of them. As always, thanks for watching, see you soon and stay beefy.